The Russian armed forces have crossed the Dnieper River and are rushing toward Kherson. Mordvichev has applied Konev's strategy. Good afternoon, dear friends. You are on the Ruslan Belov channel. We continue to analyze the daily events on the front lines with you. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and like the video, so that more people can learn the truth. The main topic of today's video will be the statement from the Ministry of Defense that the settlement of Dno is fully under the control of the Russian armed forces. What does this mean? What does it indicate? It shows that the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces, UAF, in this direction has faltered, and accordingly, the Russian side now has the opportunity to build on this success. How might this develop further? Firstly, if we look at the map, we can see that there are practically no fortifications or major cities up to Volchansk that the UAF could use to organize a strong defense. Therefore, up to Volchansk, the Russian military group is not encountering any fortifications that could be used against them. This is one scenario. The second option is advancing toward Kupiansk and capturing settlements along this route to expand their success. Not only has Dno become a reason to take pride in the Russian army today, but they have also crossed the Oskol River in the west, and another settlement is now under the control of the Russian armed forces. Thus, Kupiansk, which the UAF still holds, is under significant threat. The first threat comes from Kruglyakhovka. As you can see, the Russian army can move along the road, and with the crossing of the Oskol, the situation is becoming clearer. If you remember, before the new year, the Russian army had already entered Kupiansk, but then retreated. They retreated because the bank controlled by the UAF at that time was higher, and it was not practical to hold positions there or continue frontal assaults. There were two main issues: the water barrier and the height advantage held by the UAF. After fully capturing Dno, it can now serve as a foothold for further advances. In which direction? We will see this in the near future. Now let's move to the Kursk region. What I would like to note here is that recently we have observed movement towards Sudar. Offensive actions by the Russian army are underway here. The Russian army has also taken control of the settlement of Dno. Fighting is currently ongoing for the settlement of Sverdlikovo. As I mentioned earlier, the encirclement is tightening here, and the UAF is suffering losses. Today we received footage from Sverdlikovo showing the destruction of a NATO-style tank. It took several FPV drones, but as I said before, if an FPV crew starts working, detects a piece of equipment, and there are no electronic warfare systems in place, the unit will be destroyed. In this footage, we see how FPV drones repeatedly strike the rear of the turret, attempting to damage the ammunition. After the second drone hit, the UAF crew realizes the tank is no longer operational and decides to retreat. The third FPV drone strike detonates the ammunition, completely destroying the vehicle in a spectacular explosion. We also received extensive footage from Martinovka and Malaya Lochnia. If you remember, a week ago the UAF attempted to attack Bolshoye Soldatskoye. The Russian army was aware of this offensive, and now we have footage showing how this advance was halted and how the Russian army subsequently went on the offensive, continuing to push the UAF out of the Kursk region. I have the full footage on my Telegram channel, where I also publish political news. The footage shows dozens of destroyed UAF vehicles, pickup trucks, and warehouses. We are seeing just a few clips now, but the amount of equipment the UAF has lost in the Kursk region is staggering. Additionally, FAB bombs were used to strike UAF positions, destroying communication equipment. This is a significant effort. You can watch the full material on Telegram. What does this tell us? It shows that there is a systematic effort to deplete UAF resources, and with each passing day, the territory controlled by the UAF is shrinking. Some Western publication reports that the UAF has lost 20 square kilometers in the Kursk region over the past few months. Now let's move to the Kherson Direction. Footage from Lviv shows FPV drones and artillery in action. In such houses, sabotage and reconnaissance groups, as well as FPV drone teams, are often based. These drones, in turn, operate over areas controlled by the Russian army and monitor attempts to cross the Dnipro. Such work can be carried out systematically to eliminate the possibility of an offensive by the Ukrainian side and also in preparation for actions by the Russian side. In the footage, we can see how FPV teams are operating. along with FABs striking this area. Moving to Donbass, the Kherson Direction, there is a settlement called Dno, which has likely already been lost by the Ukrainian armed forces. The garrison there is doomed. The Russian Federation is using artillery and steadily advancing, as you can see, flanking the settlement. It is located relatively far from other positions, with a highway nearby that is fully controlled by the Russian FPV teams. Supplying the settlement is difficult, and with Shevchenko under control and Russian forces advancing in Andreevka, it is clear that holding Dno makes no military sense. Ideally, the personnel should be withdrawn and focused on defending a section that includes 3 settlements, Konstantinopolskaya, Andreevka, and Ulakli, to strengthen battle formations on all fronts. However, this is not being done, likely for certain reasons. From a military perspective, I can only explain it by the fact that FABs are actively operating, as seen in the footage. Although the material quality is poor, it shows that these villages are being hit intensively, preventing UAF concentration there. Any equipment detected will be destroyed. The drone is quite far away, but the explosions are large-scale, as we can see in the footage. This is why I believe the UAF still controls Dno, although it is clearly doomed. The Russian army understands this as well. As you can see, they are not storming it head-on, but gradually encircling it while using artillery. I think Dno will be liberated soon. As for the group remaining in Andreevka and Konstantinopolskaya, we will see how the situation develops. There is flooding in the area, and as you can see, there are 2 large settlements nearby. Moving on to the Pokrovsk direction, we have footage showing a lightly armored UAF vehicle being destroyed by an FPV drone. Here are some additional updates from various directions. Chova Direction. According to available data, Russian forces continue clearing the territory of a children's camp and a bunker located in a forested area south of the Novi district. It is also reported that assault units of the 331st Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces are actively attacking in the high-rise development area west of the fireproof materials plant. Simultaneously, Russian forward groups are gradually advancing southward from the northern districts toward the settlement of Zapadny. On the other hand, pro-Ukrainian sources report that most residential areas of Chasov Yar are already under Russian control. TTEK Direction. Updates on the map indicate corrections in favor of Ukrainian forces in the northwestern part of Toretsk. The UAF, supported by armored vehicles, counterattacked near Spoil Heap number 12 and the auto base located on the western outskirts of the Fomika district. This information is confirmed by objective control footage showing the movement of Ukrainian armored vehicles in this area and clashes with Russian forces directly on the auto base's territory. Pokrovsk Direction. Here, following the transfer of the settlement of Zelenaya under Russian control, Russian forces are attacking toward the village of Novukrainka and a UAF stronghold located at the M30 highway intersection. Additionally, intense fighting continues with Ukrainian forces on the western outskirts of the settlement of Zverevo, but without significant advances from either side. Forward Russian groups are also attempting to advance northwest of the village of Kotlina, toward the territory of the Pokrovskoye mine management, located north of the settlement of Udaknoye. At the same time, on the left flank, according to incoming reports, Russian forces, during further advances and successful assault actions, have taken control of the settlement of Nadezhdinka. Slightly further south, Russian assault groups are completing the clearing of the village of Novoandreevka and are already attempting to advance along the Serebryanaya ravine toward the neighboring settlement of Shribnoye and further west toward the settlement of Bogdana. Kherson Direction. On the northern flank, units of the 114th Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces have made significant progress west of the settlement of Petropavlovka, taking control of most of the UAF fortified area covering the northern side of the village of Andreevka. There are also reports of Russian assault groups entering the village itself on its eastern outskirts near the T0515 highway. On the eastern flank, Russian forces, with the support of artillery and FPV drones, are expanding their control zone in the northeastern part of the settlement of Dno and are engaged in battles on the southeastern outskirts of the village. There are no visible changes on the southern flank. South Donetsk Direction. As a result of active offensive actions, the settlement of Velikaya Novoselka has come under the full control of the Vostok grouping, specifically the 5th Guards Separate Tank Brigade and the 40th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces. This was reported in the daily summary from the Russian Ministry of Defense. In celebration of this important victory, Russian forces organized an improvised fireworks display at the local stadium in the center of the village, thereby confirming full and confident control of Velikaya Novoselka by Russian forces. Kharkov, Kupiansk, and Siversk directions. There are no visible changes in these areas. Kursk region. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that, during successful offensive operations by the northern grouping, the settlement of Nikolaeva Daryana in the western part of the Sudzhansky district returned to Russian control. In the rest of the Kursk region, currently occupied by Ukrainian forces, the front line remains unchanged at the time of this report. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See you tomorrow.